Fishing vessel Great Northern Labrador Coast Guard, we are reading you loud and clear.
Welcome to Seaview's podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted today that I have Becky Newdick from Safer Waves, Chief Executive at Safer Waves charity. And also I've got with me Paula Edwards, who runs Salute Her UK. And both of these ladies are working in charities which are dealing with sexual harassment, sexual violence against seafarers. So today our topic is sexual harassment, sexual violence against seafarers. Maybe if I could come to you first, Paula. Paula, would you say, is it just women or are we talking about this could be an issue for all seafarers?
I think it'll be an issue for all seafarers, not just women. It's certainly men and women who are victims of sexual violence in the military and in the Navy. So I think it'll be a similar situation.
Yeah. Becky, what at Safer Waves, do you see both men and women and all genders coming to you for support?
Yeah, percentage-wise, there are a much higher percentage of women that come to the service, but it is an issue for men and women. And we do have accounts on our website from men that have experienced sexual violence at sea. And we also have a lot of support from male seafarers who have either witnessed the issues or they've been victims of them themselves.
There was the report that came out, which was about the welfare needs of women working on cargo ships. That was Cardiff University, and I know you're both aware of that. Was that a surprise for you, the content that came out, or was it sadly something you would have expected to see, the results of that report?
I wasn't surprised by the content of the report at all. I think I was surprised that in the past nearly 20 years that I've been at sea, nothing seems to have really moved on that much. I mean, these issues were being raised then, and I'm sure they're being raised by my predecessors 20 years previously. It just seems like there's not been that much progress, particularly in the cargo sector.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the stats or what came out of the research was shocking. And when you look at the research as well, I think it's really worth mentioning that sexual violence against women statistically actually is always around the same. So if we look at women in politics, it's just less than 50% of women who've experienced sexual violence or harassment or bullying. Women in further education, it's over 50%. Women in the military, it's 62%. So I guess in all areas of life, women are adversely affected by sexual trauma, sexual violence. So I'm not surprised by the statistics at all. And I'm not surprised that actually not a lot has changed. It takes on average 10 years for systems to change their policies and procedures. And when we look at equality and diversity, and women working in areas that are heavily populated by men, we see policies not being changed quickly, because I often hear companies, businesses, or the military say that there isn't a high enough proportion of women to put all of that time and energy into changing policies and procedures. So it's like women don't really matter.
And that's a vicious cycle anyway, isn't it? Because it makes it very unattractive for the women to come in to that kind of environment anyway. Both of your organisations, you are working and supporting the seafarers right now who are suffering from some of these issues. I wonder if you could give me an overview of what your organisations are doing and how you're supporting seafarers right now. Would you like to start off with that, Paula?
Yeah, so Salute Her UK is a gender-specific organisation, so we don't work with men, it's only women. And the services that we provide are on a stepped care model. So women can come to the organisation and access things like information, advice and guidance in drop-ins, coffee mornings, all the way up to complex treatment like EMDR or CBT, and everything in between. So we run workshops for menopause, for sexual violence, how to keep yourself safe. And then we do a lot of holistic stuff as well, like yoga, art therapy. We are just in the middle of writing a short book looking at the experiences of women that access the service and doing almost like a mini autobiography for each woman. So that's really interesting as well. And then we also write research and do lots of different things like lobby Parliament and government to make changes and enforce changes.
Okay, that's interesting. So you're doing short-term and long-term things, really, aren't you, in your organisation, which is brilliant. Becky, can I come to you at Safer Waves just as an overview, because you're quite a new charity?
Yeah. We've been running for 3 years now. We've got an anonymous, confidential email service where people can come for emotional support and guidance. We've got our website where the idea is that seafarers can sort of easily access information all in one place relating to sexual violence. We've been working recently on legal fact sheets for, we started off with 9 different countries. So it's information like who to report to, what telephone numbers you can reach the police on, what support services there are available in that country, the rape crisis services and the forensic medical exams, how to access things like that. Also, we've got a project that we've been running for a while with Devon and Cornwall Police, the intention of improving access to the criminal justice system for seafarers. So making it easier for seafarers to report. That's a couple of the things that we're doing. We're hoping to run some training early next year for people that have expressed an interest in working with Safer Waves but haven't been able to for various reasons, mostly geographical reasons, so that we can almost send Safer Waves values off into the world on various ships and have people represent us and be able to support their crew better. That's the idea of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really amazing. I mean, I've seen quite a bit of publicity over the last year or so about your organisation, which seems to be getting better known now. And same for your organisation, Paula, as well. Salute Her UK. But was it correct then, Becky, that it was just you starting on your own initially, that you were the one basically doing all the support, but that you've got quite a number of great people that have joined you to help you with that role? Is that right? Was it you, just yourself at the beginning?
Yeah, so I started the website. I thought that I could sort of create a website that would at least show that there was some support out there for seafarers that were experiencing sexual violence and that people weren't on their own. And when I started sort of advertising the website to various organisations, Mission to Seafarers, Stella Maris, those kind of organisations, there was a lot of support out there, and people suggested that we become a charity so that we could receive funding and then do much more with it. And that's where I started to make inquiries with rape crisis services around the UK as to how they run their email support services or their telephone services. We ran a survey as well to see what support seafarers felt that they needed, where it was lacking. And then once we were a charity, we obviously had a trustee board and then recruited volunteers for the email support service. So when the email support service launched, at that point, we already had trustees and we had volunteers ready to go, ready to staff that service.
Brilliant. Well, it's great that you've got a few more people now that are also doing this great work with you.
Yeah.
Paula, at Salute Her, you started off initially with men and women from the services, didn't you? And now you've expanded.
Yeah, so we started off as a project within Forward Assist, which is run by Tony Wright. And we worked back in 2017. We worked predominantly with women veterans. We didn't have many service women come through. And then when we published No Man's Land in 2019, we suddenly started to get more women who were currently serving as well. The project just expanded to such a degree that we felt it was better to have Salute Her UK as her own charity. So the service is run by me, so I'm CEO, and it's run by women for women. And then we started getting more women in the local region who I guess were out at sea in different capacities. And we started getting women come through who his career, I guess, was fishing. And they started coming to the service because they couldn't find any gender-specific services that were out there. And there didn't seem to be any services that understood the unique needs of women who work at sea. So we were working and delivering therapy to those women, and then it just got bigger and bigger, really. So we have a staff team of 7 now, and 1 is dedicated to women at sea, 1 member of staff. So she runs all of our legal clinics where we have solicitors who do pro bono support for women so that they can understand where they fit within the law and compensation. And then I also have a retired policewoman who volunteers her time. So she helps with a lot of the reporting issues that women face, investigation, forensic testing, like Becky said. She helps develop all of those pathways to make sure that women have access to the right services, because some things like forensic evidence gathering is time limited, so it has to be done within a certain time period. So she helps women navigate that world. And we also have an ISVA service as well, so an independent sexual violence advisor service. So if a woman has recently been raped, that woman will be assigned that ISVA, who will almost walk shoulder to shoulder with the woman throughout the entire process to make sure that her needs are being met and to advocate on behalf of the victim. So the project is just getting bigger and bigger, really.
Great. Thank you for a bit more insight into what both your charities are doing, which is so well needed. You talked a little bit about the unique nature of working at sea, because it is a unique workplace and it's a unique environment. There is something about being on a ship away from home. You're not in a normal situation environment, and it does make people more vulnerable than, say, folks working ashore. What are some of the things that really make people more vulnerable?
Yeah, we talk a lot about this on our website because I think it's so important. There's so many factors, I think. You've got the rank structure on board the vessel, which means that if you've got somebody at the top or in the middle that is liable to abuse their power, it's much easier for them to do so because they can control aspects of their crew's lives that you wouldn't have controlled if you were in a shore-based job. You know, we've had reports of captains sort of withholding flight details or things like that. You know, the crew are ready to go home, but the captain, he can hold on to the flight details and not tell them when they're going, so he does. Or, you know, it's senior officers have got control over what work you do, when you do it, what you eat, when, all those sorts of things. So it just gives somebody so much power over other people, which can be abused. You've also got the fact that it's a very male-dominated environment. People are away from home for a long time, so both from the victim's side, they haven't got anybody to speak to about their experiences, and from the perpetrator's side as well, there's this sort of feeling of it not quite being the real world. And I think what goes with that is a feeling that there aren't real consequences as well. So that's a couple of the things. And then, of course, you don't have access to the shore-based services, and I think that's where services like Salute Her are so important, because it's quite common that if you were to access a rape crisis service in the UK, they would want you to, say, sign up for 12 weeks of counselling. You need to be available for those 12 weeks, and they need to be consecutive weeks because that's the model that they work with. So you need organisations that understand that doesn't work for people in the military, that doesn't work for merchant seafarers. They need to be able to access counselling either whilst they're away or during the times when they're home.
Can I just add a few things on the back of what Becky said? Because I agree with everything that Becky said completely. I think what I'm seeing, what makes it really unique, and probably one of the most important things to mention as well, is the limit in reporting mechanisms. So many of the women that my staff speak to say that women feel unsafe. They feel like the help and support is non-existent. They don't feel like there's many resources, and they feel like they're often discouraged as well from reporting incidents or seeking help. There is a huge power imbalance when you work in an environment that is male dominated, and a lot of the women have spoke about the fact that they've been raped and they've reported it internally, and then they have almost been coerced into redacting and not reporting legally what has happened to them. And they have been offered like higher pay, they've been offered a better chance of climbing the ladder if they redact and they don't report what's happened to them. So I think there's a lot of coercive control and behaviour, and also that there just seems to be a complete lack of awareness and training. So maritime companies, from what I've seen, don't provide adequate training or awareness programmes for men and women to access on gender-based violence and sexual harassment. And I think that this lack of awareness and training contributes to a culture of silence and normalisation of abusive behaviours. So it's almost like, because nobody has the training, nobody knows what they can do or what they can't do. And because there's just a lack of awareness, nobody does anything. And I think that's really dangerous.
That does come on to the topic of reporting, doesn't it? And why isn't it being reported as it should be? And do you both see, and perhaps Becky would like to come in on this, do you see that there's some real barriers, as Paula's just touched on, to actually feeling that there is a system that's worth reporting to?
Yeah, definitely. If something were to happen on board, your normal way of reporting would be through your senior officers to the office. You know, you would go to the captain, he would make a report to the office. So I think there needs to be ways of going around that system, ways for seafarers to contact somebody directly. I mean, you can always contact the DPA, so designated person ashore, but I don't think many seafarers would feel confident with that, and you would be better off having a sort of either a confidential reporting line or a particular liaison officer, but a trained liaison officer, because I've experienced trying to speak to a sort of untrained liaison officer, and again, that only makes things worse. But there's that, and then there's also, can you directly report to law enforcement without even having to go through the company? Because if a crime has happened to you, why should you have to go through the company, really? That's what shipping companies don't quite understand sometimes, I think, is that there's this expectation to sort of follow the structure. And obviously, in some countries, that's going to be the easiest thing to do if you don't understand local law enforcement. So yeah, I think there needs to be more options for seafarers. I think that's at the heart of everything that we do at Safer Waves, is options and choices, so that people don't have to just follow one particular path if it's not the right path for them.
It should be person-centred, Becky, shouldn't it? So it should be through the lens of a victim and what the victim needs to ensure that she is safe and supported and has access to time-sensitive, confidential therapy or support or advice and guidance. And there just seems to be a lack of awareness on those issues and what should be happening.
I think we are seeing more now that people are prepared to offer alternatives, because when we first started approaching shipping companies, and some were very receptive, some were very interested, but others, we got the response of, thank you very much for the information, but our seafarers don't need your helpline because we have our own internal mechanisms. But I think some shipping companies are now coming to realise that they can have their internal mechanisms and they can offer external support, because you would with all sorts of other issues. You know, if you needed help with addiction or you help with bereavement, you wouldn't necessarily tell your employees they have to come through the company with that.
Yeah, it should be an either or, shouldn't it not?
Is there many examples then of, I'm trying to look at something positive here, but are there examples then of shipping companies that are coming to both of your organisations for sort of best practice advice, which I think is a positive thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. There's lots of people very proactive There might be one particular person at that company that takes an interest and has then asked us to present to their board, who have then all taken an interest, which is great. Again, people adding our helpline to their own staff resources page, things like that. People agreeing to put up posters around the ships. There's lots of encouraging signs and lots of people that have come to us first without us going to them.
So that's them being proactive. So there are some good companies, aren't there, then, at least some that aren't being brought along to the process, kicking and screaming?
Yeah, of course. And we always say as well, a sort of a willingness to talk about sexual violence and gender discrimination on board your ships or on your vessels. It doesn't mean that you have more of a problem than anybody else. And no one should ever look at it that way. It could just mean that people are more comfortable reporting it, or you're just having a more open conversation. It'll be happening on ships whether companies admit it or not.
Yeah. And that's the thing about any kind of good quality sort of grievance reporting system. It can't be a good system if nothing is reported, because that just means it's probably not working at all. Having looked at other, developing systems actually in other industries, but fishing, for example, a system needs to allow for reporting and for people to be quite comfortable reporting at all levels. So a 0 level of reports is probably not actually indicating a great situation. It just means nobody's choosing to report.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. There's exactly the same as a safety system, isn't it? If people aren't reporting near misses or incidents, then it doesn't mean you're not having incidents.
Paula, have you also got some bright spots? Have you got some organisations that have actually proactively come to you for any support on best practice? I'm not asking you to name them necessarily.
Can I name them?
Yes, if you want. Yeah, sure.
I've just been working with iSwan, and I have delivered a 4-hour course to the telephone line team. So I've delivered a course on trauma-informed care, how to, not trigger someone if they're disclosing sexual violence, how to report sexual violence, in stuff like just trauma-informed language and what helps a person feel safe and secure when they are disclosing what has happened to them, and just understanding the legal definitions as well. Every country has a slightly different legal definition of sexual violence and what comes under sexual violence, but actually, on the whole, most definitions are around the same. So we also delivered sexual violence. And for instance, we often, and I don't know if you have this as well, Becky, we often have women who will ring us and say that they have been sexually assaulted. However, when they actually talk about what's happened, they've actually been raped. So we did quite a lot of work on just understanding language and the importance of actually explaining to women what has happened to them so that they know. I often feel that when women use the word in sexual assault, they are minimising what has actually taken place and what has happened to them. So we've delivered that training, and that's all we've done really. Becky has far more experience working with companies than we do.
Thank you, Paula. We're talking about issues that affect people not just for a few days, but potentially long term. What are some of the consequences? What is the negative impact on them? Do you want to start off with that, Paula?
Yeah, so I kind of split the impact into physical and psychological. So a lot of the women talk about being sexually assaulted or raped or experience bullying and harassment and discrimination, and that impacting on their physical health. So lowered immune system, women have regular tummy upsets, feeling sick, feeling on edge all of the time, feeling frightened, scared, feeling like they don't matter, that they're not safe. It really takes a toll on women's self-esteem and confidence and the ability to actually confidently talk about what's happened to them. So women almost don't trust themselves. And I think those are the short-term issues that take place. But the legacy of trauma is far worse. So a lot of the women feel like psychologically they're completely broken. They can't go back into a place of employment that's dominated by men because they feel like they associate trauma with men in toxic masculinity. So it has a huge impact on every part of the life, not just work or employment. It impacts on housing, it impacts on family life, friendships.
Yeah, it's not just short-term impact when that issue's running, is it? Becky, what impact are you seeing in terms of consequences?
Such a negative impact on physical and mental health. I think in terms of career as well, which, that's not our main focus, but we see it a lot with people that come to us, perhaps have just started out in their career, be doing really well. Something will happen, they'll have been attacked or something similar, and they don't want to go back on that ship. They don't want to go back on a sister ship, one that looks similar. They potentially don't want to go back to sea. So I think we need to do more to support people to return to the career that they chose in the first place, if that's what they want. And I am seeing colleges doing that. We're hearing more and more about colleges actually taking the time to find out what they can do to get their cadets back to sea after an incident.
I have heard a number of women seafarers who have talking about experiences early in their career and that they really considered not carrying on and had to obviously go through some really difficult times even just to be able to stay at sea. What isn't happening which should be happening?
I would like to see better reporting. I really think that with better reporting, people would know there were consequences for their actions, and I think it would discourage a lot of the incidents that happen. And I think that it's about empowering seafarers. Perhaps there's an incident of sexual harassment. It's about that seafarer feeling they can actually go to someone and say, I was sexually harassed. Because when they keep it to themselves, that might snowball and that might escalate into something worse. So I think we are seeing a lot more openness and a lot more discussion. And I've seen reports of people saying, I was sexually harassed. I went to my senior officer. They sorted it out. And that's fantastic. It's really, really good to see when people can do that. And you see the impact is so much less on that person when they've had a positive response from their senior officers or their managers. It's when people have reported and not had any help or have been told to keep it quiet, then you see that really has a negative impact that kind of compounds the trauma of the original event.
Yeah, I didn't know if Paula wanted to add anything at all.
There's a lot of things that I would recommend. So I think, following on from what Becky said, I think we need to establish clear policies that are robust and well communicated throughout the entire organisation. And I think the policy needs to define what constitutes sexual violence. And in the policy, it should report, outline the reporting process and emphasise that complaints will be taken seriously, because at the minute, the women who've accessed us feel like the issues are being dismissed and the voice isn't being heard. An inclusive culture that respects women, that enhances dignity and equality and encourages almost open communication and mutual respect, because I'm not seeing that at the moment. And I think one of the probably most important things for me, what I would like to see happen, is training being delivered on bystander interventions. It's not just the responsibility of the victim to report what has happened. I think we all have a responsibility to protect each other. Many of the women that I've spoke to have said that when they were sexually harassed, one was sexually assaulted, that people knew, her colleagues knew that it had happened and everyone was talking about it. Someone had walked past and didn't intervene, didn't try and stop what was happening. if we encourage bystander interventions in training, then that might help the situation and change the culture as well. It might help women also feel comfortable that they can report something, because witnesses have all almost with her walked forward and reported what's happened, because I think many people feel really lonely and isolated and scared, and that isolation prevents them from reporting what's happened. And then, of course, statistically, we all know there might be a problem, but stats are saying something different.
And all men are not all toxic, in that workplace, and they have a job to be allies to other colleagues, don't they?
Yeah, and it's really made a massive impact for Salutaire UK, because although Salutaire UK used to be a project within Forward Assist, I still work with Forward Assist. We're still co-located. So it's really nice because Tony supports Salutaire UK and is an ally for women. And that also gets other men to listen and try and help the cause. So I think it's really important to have male allies.
So what are some of the solutions?
Do you want another positive story?
Why not? That would be nice.
Just before we move on, just off the back of what Paula said there about having male allies, I think it's so important. It definitely gets other men talking. But we were fortunate enough recently, one of my male colleagues approached me and said that he would like to do some fundraising for Safer Waves. So he organised completely off his own back. I didn't get involved apart from a little bit of publicity. He organised a sponsored walk down on the Jurassic Coast. He got colleagues, male and female, to attend and to sponsor him as well. And in the end, the core group of hikers who did the complete 80 miles was four men, one coxswain, two chief engineers, and a rating as well. So I think that just sent such a great message.
It really did, didn't it? And it sort of got people talking about an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And he spoke very openly about all the reasons that he wanted to organise the walk in the first place. So it was fantastic.
That is a nice positive story.
That's really positive.
Yeah. So in terms of employers with a lot of power in the situation, so I hear people talking about having a zero tolerance policy, but that isn't really the case, is it? Because it doesn't look like there is the right number of prosecutions for the number of times this is happening.
Well, I mean, what you've got to remember is that the number of prosecutions for rape in general in the UK is extremely low. So if you were to add the complications of working at sea or working abroad, your chances of prosecution, I would say, are very, very slim. The other thing is, okay, communications have improved over the last 10, 20 years. But if you're talking about a cargo ship that's doing sort of 10 knots across the Atlantic, there is a lot of time while that vessel is not near land that I think evidence is lost, opportunities are lost to actually gather what you need and take statements and things like that. So unless the captain or whoever's dealing with it on board is extremely confident in what they're doing and able to get good advice from ashore, you're going to struggle there as well.
And you've been working on some of the legal side of it, haven't you? Devon and Cornwall Police, I think you've been having conversations and working together to look at whether it can synchronise that process of reporting.
Yeah, we've been looking at how somebody could gather the evidence themselves if that was what was needed, particularly in terms of gathering not so much forensic evidence, although that is a big part of it. And there is actually IMO guidance about gathering evidence after a crime at sea, but also about gathering the information that police may ask you at a later date. So rather than, people may write down certain things that have happened, but rather than trying to recall something 2 weeks later, people can have instant access to with calling it a self-administered interview at the moment, which is still in its development stages, where they would be able to fill that in themselves. And then when they get back to land or back in a position where they're able to report to police if they want to, or even reporting to the shipping company, they've got all that information to hand.
With all my guests, I always give everyone a chance to have one last question, which is about deciding what could be done better in the future. If I start with you, Becky, if you were given one thing that you could change that would improve things, what would it be?
Can you start with Paula?
Yeah, no, I can. Paula, I'm gonna start with you, Paula. So if you could tell me, is there one thing that you could change that you feel would make a difference, that would improve things, what would it be?
So for me, it would be creating really clear report mechanisms and for companies to work and collaborate with organisations like Salute Her or like Becky's organisation, so that we can work collaboratively in making sure that women have and men have access to services that would support them. So I think a change in report mechanisms and companies collaborating with other organisations. And I think it's really interesting when Becky's just spoken about rape kits, forensic rape kits. So I have a meeting in place in a couple of weeks' time with the Rape Recovery Centre. They actually do provide at-home forensic evidence gathering kits, but there's a lot of controversy around it. But I think it's really important because what seems to happen in these cases is because there's no forensic evidence, it turns into a he said, she said situation. And then women are being told you don't have any forensic evidence, so there's a low chance that there's going to be a successful outcome that's positive. So I think the collecting of forensic evidence needs to change, and report mechanisms also need to change.
Well, you did cheat there, Paula, because you got 2 in, but
Oh, sorry. Sorry, you can have 2 as well, Becky.
but they both sound like very sensible ideas. I'm going to allow them. Going to give you special dispensation. So, Becky, does that leave you with something? Because there is if you go second, you might not have the idea that you thought of might have gone. Tell me what would be your one thing that you would like to change to improve things.
I think I would like to encourage people to be brave when talking about sexual violence. And I'm not talking about the victims and the survivors of rape, but I'm talking about crew on board. It is very, very hard to know what to do for the best if you haven't been trained, if you haven't had training like Paula was talking about how to sensitively handle a disclosure, how to not make things worse. But we've seen time and time again that saying nothing is just making people feel terrible because they feel that they don't matter, that nobody cares what happened to them. So simply being able to ask a member of crew that you've seen as having a problem, are you okay? Do you need me to do something? What would you like me to do? I think would go quite a long way. And we're hoping that we can provide some of the training that makes people feel more confident in doing that.
Well, thank you very much for coming and joining me today and talking to me about this issue and for helping so many people as you already have done. Now, we're going to ring the bell and we're going to leave the bridge. So it's time to say goodbye.
Fishing vessel Great Falls, Aberdeen Coast Guard, we are reading